to the next segment. It is a case study, ladies and gentlemen. We have securing the digital economy. The enterprise attack surface is massive and continuing to grow and evolve rapidly. Depending upon the size of the enterprise, there are up to several hundred billion time-varying signals that need to be analyzed to accurately calculate risk. AI and machine learning have become critical technologies in information security. These technologies learn over time, drawing from the past to identify new types of attacks now. This session shows us on how AI can substantially decrease the vulnerability of organizations to cyber threats. A big word and something which we all are looking forward. For this segment to take us through the case study, let me invite Mr. Ganapathy N, Delivery Director of Prevalent AI, and Mr. Namith Cholappurath, the Head of Architecture, Prevalent AI, inviting both of you to join me on stage. Yep, please. So over to you, sir, please.
Am I audible? Okay, great. Good evening. Thank you, NASCOM, for providing this opportunity. So, it's a topic about, the cyber security and securing the digital economy. The keynote speaker, Krishna, has articulated very well on the digital part that's happening, right? The increasing digital adoption that's happening there. And he has articulated very well. That has covered most of my slides here, right? So that's very good. And what we wanted to take an extension of is that everything that we touch is going digital. The retail, we heard how it's been transforming. I want to extend it further, saying that all this digital interaction and the physical world, lines are getting blurred. In the sense, we saw that in retail that's happening. We used to have tuition classes, physical. Now, Byju's and other things are edtech, digital. Movie halls where we used to have fun, OTTs have taken, right? So it's all happening together and the lines are getting completely blurred. While we enjoy all these benefits, whether it's a co-win platform or a payment or any of that, there are challenges as well because of this massive increase in the cyberspace. Social media influence, to quote, right? A tweet, a cartoon, a fake news, or an incorrect reference is creating riots in society and costing human lives. And it's happening both in underdeveloped countries, developing countries, and in developed countries, which we have all seen, right? That's the scary part that's happening, right? I think and then Industry 4.0, right? Which is already out there, and it's all the manufacturing is going to get changed. The skills which the blue-collar job people is going to have, they need to upskill to survive in the Industry 4.0. One of the key things which I want to bring the attention is that the fifth domain. Probably that could be one of the terms that may be new for this audience. US government has addressed and acknowledged that the fifth dimension of threat when two countries engage in any warfare is going to be the cyber warfare. The three of them which we already know, right? The Army, the Navy, and the Air Force. The fourth dimension is basically the space, because each country has their own space programs. They use military satellites to get information about it. Even as part of attack, that can be targeted. That's the fourth dimension. And the fifth one is the cyber warfare, which countries can engage. And we have seen many, many cases of state-sponsored cyber attacks that's happening. So what does all this lead to? It all leads to the fact that it is imperative that enterprises has to secure their cyber assets. Whatever is out there in your cyber, just like how you physically look after your physical assets, the cyber assets, they need to be secured. But what is the unfortunate reality, right? I want to take the quote from the former FBI director. There are only two types of companies or enterprises that are there. Ones that are hacked and ones that are going to get hacked. And this is the unfortunate reality. So whenever a hack or a breach that happens, what actually happens to the enterprises? There is, number one, reputation loss, data loss, impact to the business. A lot of effort has to go and clean up that part, contain it, recover aspect, everything. So that will all add to the cost related to the cyber crime or a breach. So let's look at some of the numbers. In 2015, the cost of the cybercrime across the global was around 3.5 trillion, and in 2025, the projection is a 10.5 trillion. So the problem that we are discussing is a $1 trillion problem. And also one more thing, whenever there is this type of losses, most of the insurance companies, they have started a product called as cyber insurance, where they have writing premium, assessing the enterprise's risks, and having a market for that as well. What does this lead to? Every enterprise that we talk about will increase their spending on the cybersecurity. Let's look at some of the numbers. The cumulative spending on IT spending, specifically on cybersecurity initiatives, is going to have a massive increase. And it is looked at around like 1 trillion for the next 5 years as a cumulative spending. And I know for sure next year, if we are having this similar session, the numbers will definitely go up. And what about the attack surfaces, right? The competitor asked, like, how many of you have a smartphone? I wanted to extend that. I can tell easily that each one of you have a smartphone, office laptop, personal laptop, fitness band, smartwatch, Google Home, Alexa, etc., right? At least 5 to 6 or 7 connected devices. And if you look at the projection, by 2025, there will be 30 billion connected devices. Just think of the scale. The current population of the world is just 7 billion. So it's across the world, each one is going to have like around 5 to 6 devices which are going to get connected. Right? That's the scale that we want to look at. And one of the most common attack that's happening is the ransomware attack. Right? Earlier, they take the data, they create a fraud, insurance, etc. Now, they just hold your cyber assets as a hostage, and they are asked to pay for that through various means which are anonymous and means so that you can get your assets back. And it's increasing. Every 21 seconds there's a ransomware attack that's happening. And even the most sad part is, I think maybe the chairs are blocking the view, it says that for an enterprise, whenever a breach happens, it's not that the enterprises are aware of a breach. The average time they take to realize that they have been breached is 197 days. That's around like 6 months. This is based on an IBM study there. And once they realize that it's been breached, it takes around close to 70 days to contain it and recover it and all that part. And there is a cost to it, right? For all this times, the loss, the business reputation loss, the cleanup and the spend, it costs around approximately $3 million for every breach that happens. And as the time increases, the cost goes up. What's the objective? Why are people getting into this, right? So what are the attack objectives? Number one, I think it's very clear, the money aspect, banking transactions, retails, all the aspects where they can directly siphon your money out, they can use that. Data, we have been n number of discussion, data is the new oil. PII, your personally identifiable information, it is valued, right? It's around like $200 per one record. That's the cost for it. Computing resources, the new trend, which is called as cryptojacking, which I will explain with a use case in the subsequent slide, is on the rise. Chaos, use that to gain a political advantage or fight against the nation. So these are some of the objectives. And who are the hackers? So for an enterprise point of view, mostly it will be external, which could be like a rookies or an hacker groups or even enterprises or state-sponsored attacks that can happen. And internal, some of the rogue employees who are unhappy or wanted to know that something is available or as part of the one they do that. And partners, because as an enterprise there are vendors and other partners they get involved, so there is a challenge with them as well. And how easy is the attack? For $50 there is a malware tutorial that is available. You can get that and it's that easy. And as I quoted before, right, $200 is what a cost for a PII information that's available for a specific person. So there is a massive opportunity from a hacker's point of view to get into this, right? And hackers are always evolving and they are persisting because they need to get it right only once. And they go by no rules. They have strictly no rules. So what is the solution? Enter security data science. It's very clear that enterprises, to tackle this problem, they have a different view of it. The attacker's psychology and then the defender's psychology, right? From an enterprise point of view, they always needs to be defense, care about their defense and be resilient. The resilient is the most key word, is to ensure that even if a breach happens, how can you escape that without minimum damage to it, right? Are all your assets being protected? Are you able to detect it fast? Are you able to contain it, block it and respond to that? That's the resilience aspect that enterprise has to focus. And how do they do that? First one is the security tradecraft. It's basically a clear understanding of the cyber domain, the various nuances to it. What are your assets? How is your network traffic looking? What are the various roles there? How are you tracking your employees? The entire domain, the firewalls. Are you updating the softwares right? Do you have proper monitoring of information, etc.? As you have all this data out there, it is imperative that you really need like a big data technology to ingest, process all this information, because the data comes from various logs, different formats, structured, unstructured, and the entire spectrum of it. To process all that information, it's of large volume, because every network traffic is an incoming and outgoing. So the entire thing needs to be tracked. That's where the big data technology comes in. And to add to that, it's building analytics to it, right? So as the previous keynote speaker has mentioned that 90% of the data is wastage, right? So how do we actually convert the raw data into actionable insights which are going to save the organizations? This is where they need to use multiple set of technology, analytics, starting from a simple correlation of multiple events and using advanced techniques in machine learning, text processing, supervised, unsupervised, and even deep learning will help into play. To quote that example of cryptojacking, right? So cryptojacking is a case where the hackers use the cloud network and they use the compute resources and use it to mine any of the cryptocurrencies and transfer it. So from a hacker point of view, they look at, hey, this specific enterprise, this is the user. They log in either with multiple techniques like brute force, any of that. Once they log in, in cloud you have the ability to assume more roles. They add on to the roles and then they spin up a specific EC2 instance or any of that and use that compute to build the mine a crypto coin and then transfer that. So if you look at this, these are a series of pattern of events that happen, and this is all from using different data sources, etc. So how does an organization try to understand that? That's where the analytics should be smart enough to build behavioral models of what an actual regular user is doing and then see the anomalies or something that's coming different and then able to stop it there. And this is what we at Prevalent primarily focus on. We are building cybersecurity solutions powered with data science for enterprises. The core team of that has been worked with the UK government and was heading the UK intelligence agency. After retirement, multiple cybersecurity ventures was done, and currently we are at UK and Kochi, and we work with large enterprises to provide security solutions. And what we have a staff of around 150, and what we have is a security data science platform which will help the customers to bring in their data, and we have solutions out there and will build cyber security enterprise solutions for them. And I will hand over to Namith to provide a specific case study on that regard. So just one more aspect. So if I had sparked interest on this cyber topic, these are some of the recommended ratings for that. One is the fifth domain which I covered. And in cybersecurity, what are the, how do you measure the risk, quantify that so that you can plan that accordingly? And it's a web rating on NIST framework, because this is one of the most commonly used framework that organizations use to identify that. I will hand over Namith for a case study that we have done for a global telco.
So you've heard from the first part of the presentation on cyber crimes and the impact of cyber crimes on the world economy and to the common man in general. Let's try to understand that in a bit more detail using a specific case study. So what I'm going to cover is the case study of a global telco organization who has approached us, who has acknowledged this problem and approached us with their problem statement and how we went about helping them. So this is the problem statement that they presented, as in, so they wanted to set up a security operations center and make sure they have a single view of all the risk within their organization. They wanted to do it in such a way that they reduce manual effort in trying to go about it. And they wanted to harness data in measuring all their risk and controls across the organization. How did we help them? We helped them set up a security data science platform, which is essentially a high performance data platform which will help them ingest data from all their data sources, from more than 50 different data sources that they had, and which will process them with high velocity. And they were able to achieve a number of outcomes out of this. So so just to give you a flavor of what they've been able to achieve, they were able to get a holistic picture of their remote working risk. This is very important within the post-COVID world, right? Where almost the majority of the organization is actually working from home. So but they may be actually working from home, and there is so much of different exposure to that, right? As in, there are people who may be working from various different countries. They may be using various different devices. They may be using the company device as well as their own device. So which means that you no longer have the luxury of a secure IT infrastructure within your office to actually ensure security. You need to go to more kind of sophisticated means. So how do you know who's actually accessing your data, and how do you know what are the security gaps that are out there? So this organization was able to understand a holistic picture of all their remote working risk at their fingertips using a very easy to use dashboard, but with a massively powerful engine at the back. They were able to do user behavior analysis. So, which is like what kind of anomalies are there in user behaviors. So, are there any misuse or abuse of resources? Are there any leakage of sensitive information? And this was another thing that they were able to do. So, just to give you a flavor of some of the quirky insights they've been able to uncover using this platform, I'll just tell you. So there was an incident where they were able to identify that an employee had uploaded sensitive data into a public-facing stock market website which contains sensitive data related to an upcoming project. Yeah. There was also another scenario of impossible travel. That is, the same person was actually logging in from 2 different countries, and that too at the same time. So this was later traced back to somebody actually sharing credentials between on-site and offshore. And that is a breach of security, right? There were incidents of low and slow file transfer. So which is where there was a desktop which was establishing thousands of connections to a remote host and transferring small amount of data, which means that you generally would not be detected. But over a period of 7 days, it had transferred gigabytes of data. So now, how do we go about actually implementing these kind of solutions? There are so many valuable sources of information that are out there. Yeah. So earlier we heard Venu in the last panel discussion talking about dark data, which is essentially nothing but a lot of data that is collected but not effectively harnessed. Yeah. So if you look at all the sources of data that are there within the organization, you have data related to identities or your identity management software that will be there within the organization. There is data related to all the logs that are collected by your laptops and all the devices that are there within the organization. You have various security tools that are deployed within the organization, like your firewalls or your Microsoft Defender and all that. But unless you actually put all this data together, you don't essentially harness that data and give you a holistic picture of your risk. And to put data together, there are so many steps towards actually putting data together. You need to ingest and process all this data, which we used in this example a number of technologies like NiFi and Spark and Kafka and things like that to be able to achieve the outcome. But there is a lot of data which is very different in terms of, say, some data that can be processed in batches, some data that can be streamed into the platform, some data that is structured, semi-structured and unstructured kind of data. And there are lots of nuances in terms of what is sensitive, what is not sensitive. How do you model that data? How do you actually join up that data? And once you actually are able to process all that data, how do you store them? So depending upon how you harness them, data might be stored in data warehouses or data lakes, or in certain specific analytical use cases, we make use of graph databases like Neo4j to actually store the data. But once the data is available, that is when you're ready to do your insights and analytics on top of it. This is where you run your machine learning and deep learning and say advanced data science kind of models to harness these kind of quirky insights that we talked about earlier. And once you are able to run all those analytics, you can actually consume all this information using very easy to use dashboards, or you can plug it back into your security application to say that, okay, we now have this kind of a rogue behavior, now go and do something about it. So with that, I take you back to where we started. There are two kinds of companies that are out there. Those that have been hacked and those that will be hacked. How long your organization can be in the second group depends on how smart you are with data and technology. And with that, I come to a conclusion of the presentation.